Welcome to Moments in History channel. Imagine a chessboard, but instead of pawns and kings, the pieces are battleships, aircraft carriers, and destroyers. The board isn't a mere 64 squares, but the vast, unforgiving waters of the Pacific Ocean. This was the stage for the largest naval battle in human history, the Battle of Leyte Gulf. Fought from October 23rd to 26th, 1944, this colossal clash wasn't just a battle. It was the thunderous climax of the Pacific War, a desperate final gamble by the Empire of Japan to turn the tide against the unstoppable American advance. Today, we're diving deep into the turbulent waters surrounding the Philippine islands of Leyte, Samar, and Luzon, to witness a conflict of unprecedented scale and consequence. This is the story of how the Imperial Japanese Navy was shattered, how American forces secured the liberation of the Philippines, and how the path to ultimate victory was paved with unparalleled courage and sacrifice. By late 1944, the war in the Pacific had reached a critical juncture. The American war machine, a juggernaut of industrial might, was pushing relentlessly westward, island by island, closing the net around Japan. The next logical step was the Philippines, a strategic archipelago that, if captured, would sever Japan's vital supply lines from Southeast Asia, effectively starving its war effort of oil and other crucial resources. For the Japanese High Command, this was a line in the sand they could not afford to let the Americans cross. Losing the Philippines meant losing the war. So, they devised a plan of staggering ambition and complexity, codenamed Sho-Go 1, or Operation Victory 1. It was an all-or-nothing roll of the dice. The plan was to lure the main American carrier fleet away with a decoy force, while 3 separate Japanese fleets would converge on the American invasion force at Leyte Gulf, crushing it from multiple directions. It was a brilliant, intricate plan, but one that relied on perfect timing, coordination, and a healthy dose of luck. Luxuries that were in short supply for the beleaguered Japanese Navy. Opposing them was a formidable American armada. The U.S. Third Fleet, commanded by the aggressive and legendary Admiral William Halsey, and the Seventh Fleet, under the steady hand of Admiral Thomas Kinkaid. Together, they represented the most powerful naval force ever assembled. Their mission, to protect General MacArthur's landing forces and annihilate any Japanese naval threat. The stage was set for a confrontation that would dwarf all that had come before. The battle wasn't a single, monolithic event, but a series of 4 distinct, ferocious engagements. It began on October 23rd with the Battle of the Sibuyan Sea. American submarines first drew blood, spotting and sinking 2 heavy cruisers from Admiral Takeo Kurita's powerful center force. The next day, American carrier planes swarmed Kurita's fleet as it steamed through the narrow Sibuyan Sea. The air was thick with anti-aircraft fire and roaring engines. The pride of the Japanese Navy, the super battleship Musashi, one of the 2 largest battleships ever built, endured a relentless onslaught. It took an incredible 19 torpedoes and 17 direct bomb hits before the behemoth finally succumbed to the waves, a staggering loss for Japan. Believing Kurita's force was neutralized, Admiral Halsey received reports of the Japanese decoy fleet to the north, a force of carriers under Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa. The bait was set. Halsey, ever the aggressive carrier admiral, saw an opportunity to wipe out Japan's remaining carriers. He took the bait, turning his entire powerful Third Fleet northward in pursuit. A decision that would become one of the most debated in naval history. As Halsey raced north, he left the San Bernardino Strait, the direct route for Kurita's center force to the American landing beaches, completely unguarded. The gate was wide open. Meanwhile, to the south, Japan's southern force, split into 2 groups under Admirals Nishimura and Shima, was steaming towards the Surigao Strait. They were walking into a perfectly laid trap. Waiting for them was Admiral Jesse Oldendorf's 7th Fleet Support Force. Oldendorf, a master of naval tactics, arranged his battleships and cruisers in a classic battle line, a maneuver known as crossing the T. This allowed his ships to bring all their main guns to bear on the approaching Japanese column, which could only fire its forward guns in return. As Nishimura's ships entered the strait in the dead of night on October 25th, They were savaged first by American PT boats, then by destroyers launching devastating torpedo attacks. Those that survived the gauntlet ran headlong into the overwhelming firepower of Oldendorf's battle line. The sky erupted in a fury of shellfire. It was a slaughter. Nishimura's force was annihilated. Admiral Shima, following behind and witnessing the carnage, wisely decided to retreat. The Battle of Surigao Strait was a textbook execution of naval strategy, and the last time in history that battleships would face each other in a major line of battle engagement. While Oldendorf celebrated his decisive victory and Halsey chased the decoy carriers far to the north, disaster was brewing off the coast of Samar. Remember Admiral Kurita's neutralized center force? It wasn't neutralized. Despite the loss of the Musashi, Kurita had regrouped and, finding the San Bernardino Strait unguarded, slipped through during the night. On the morning of October 25th, his force of 4 battleships, 6 heavy cruisers, and a screen of destroyers stumbled upon a completely unprepared and utterly outgunned group of American ships. This was Taffy 3, one of 3 escort carrier groups assigned to protect the landing beaches. Commanded by Rear Admiral Clifton Sprague, Taffy 3 consisted of just 6 small, slow escort carriers, 3 destroyers, and 4 even smaller destroyer escorts. Their job was to provide air support for ground troops, not to fight a surface fleet led by the world's largest remaining battleship, the Yamato. The mismatch was almost comical. It was like a pack of wolves descending on a flock of sheep. What happened next is one of the most heroic and legendary actions in the history of the US Navy. Faced with certain destruction, Taffy 3 did not run. They turned and fought. Sprague ordered his jeep carriers to launch every plane they had, armed with whatever they could carry, be it torpedoes, bombs, or just machine guns, and throw them at the Japanese giants. The destroyers and destroyer escorts charged headlong into the teeth of overwhelming firepower, laying smokescreens and firing torpedoes in suicidally brave attacks. The destroyer USS Johnston, led by the indomitable commander Ernest Evans, charged directly at the Japanese line, engaging cruisers and battleships many times its size before it was finally overwhelmed and sunk. For over 2.5 hours, this tiny force held off Kurita's massive fleet. The pilots of Taffy 3 flew sortie after sortie, making dummy runs when they ran out of ammunition, just to distract and harass the Japanese gunners. The sheer ferocity and seeming insanity of the American defense baffled Admiral Kurita. His fleet was becoming disorganized, his communications were poor, and he was taking more damage than he ever thought possible from such a small force. Believing he was facing Halsey's main carrier fleet and fearing he was falling into a trap, Kurita made a fateful decision. With victory in his grasp and the vulnerable American transports just over the horizon, he ordered his fleet to turn around and retreat. Taffy 3 had saved the invasion. Simultaneously, far to the north, Halsey's 3rd Fleet found and destroyed Ozawa's decoy carriers at the Battle of Cape Engano. While a tactical success, it came at the cost of nearly losing the entire Leyte invasion. The what-ifs of Halsey's decision continue to be debated to this day. When the smoke cleared, the scale of the Japanese defeat was staggering. They had lost 4 aircraft carriers, 3 battleships, including the mighty Musashi, 10 cruisers, and 11 destroyers. Over 10,000 Japanese sailors lost their lives. The Imperial Japanese Navy, once the terror of the Pacific, was finished as an effective fighting force. It would never again be able to mount a major offensive. The Battle of Leyte Gulf was more than just a victory. It was the death knell of Japanese naval power. It secured the American hold on the Philippines, cut Japan off from its empire's resources, and sealed its ultimate fate. It was a battle defined by brilliant strategy, like Oldendorf's crossing the T, but also by desperate gambles and moments of unbelievable heroism, like the last stand of Taffy 3. It stands as a monumental testament to the courage, skill, and sacrifice of tens of thousands of sailors and airmen who fought across those vast waters, changing the course of history in 4 chaotic, bloody, and unforgettable days. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the largest naval battle in history. If you found this story as fascinating as we do, please hit that like button. And consider subscribing to Moments in History channel for more explorations of pivotal historical events. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious